cultural guide. Wednesday, Sundays, catch the ride. Football hoops, we breaking wide. Stats and facts, truth on high. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Corner the field, we strategize. Breaking the game down, no disguise. Play by play, we analyze. I wear sharp, we magnify. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays heat, Sundays ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel. Wednesdays heat, Sundays ignite. We talking legends shining bright. Back and forth, day or night. This the plug, we bring the light. SWAT talk with the combos real. From Texas to Florida, we seal the deal. Just pull up, the vibes are real. Chopping it up, we spin the wheel.
All right, everybody, what's going on, man? How y'all doing? Welcome to today's edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. I'm a tour guide around the swag, Steve Wells coming at you, and we are gonna preview week 13. We are in the final full week of the regular season. This is the last game of the season for the majority of the league. So we're gonna talk about it, and by the end of this weekend, we will have our East Division champ, whether that's Jackson State, Alabama State. We will know who will be in the SWAC championship game, and we'll know who will be facing the Prairie View Panthers. So with that being said, man, we're gonna go ahead and make sure y'all hit those socials: Facebook, Swag Talk, Instagram, Swag Talk, Twitter, Swag Talk 76. Like the video, comment, and share, and don't forget to subscribe. We are making our way up to 1,500 subscribers, so if you can help us reach that goal, man, it'd be much appreciated. So let's go ahead and jump into this, man. We're gonna start off with Prairie View and Prairie View taking on Mississippi Valley. Panthers, like I said, they got the division wrapped up, so they playing out the string. And this team has been playing really well offensively the last few weeks. Defensively, still tops in the league. Not giving up much points. Not giving up a lot of yardage. And defensively, they really stymied some people. They really shut down Pine Bluff last week. And they kind of had their way with them. They did the same thing as Alabama and them 2 weeks ago. And just to keep it simple, I feel like they're gonna do the same thing here. Valley hasn't really had a lot. Josh Brown missed last week's game against Bama State with an injury. I don't know his status, but they turned the ball over like 4 times against Bama State in the third quarter, which cost them that game. I mean, they already were losing, but it made the game worse. So, they really couldn't move the ball, and I don't really see them doing a lot on the ground or in the air in this game either. Right now, they're averaging 17.9 points per game. Prairie View is averaging 29.3 points per game. And like I said, they've scored in the fifth. They scored 56 last week, I think 49 the week before, so they've really ramped it up at the end of the season. Defensively, they're giving up 16.6 points per game, and Valley's giving up 37.4. When you look at total offense, Panthers 425 yards per game, Valley 282. Total defense, Valley 397.1, Prairie View 281.1. The running game for Prairie View's been there all year. They're averaging 199 yards per game. Valley is at 99 and a half, so not even at 100 yards per game. Running the ball, even with a guy like Josh Brown who could make things happen out of nothing. They just haven't really been able to run the ball as a unit. Rushing defense, Valley 167 yards per game. Prairie View 150. Passing offense, Panthers 225.3. Cam Peters been really good these last few weeks, and so you really like to see that. That's what makes this offense click even better. Josiah Rockwell, one of the top receivers in the league. Like I said, the running game with Bingman and McDowell, they've been running the ball extremely well. This team is really coming to their own. And Valley, 182 yards per game through the air, facing a defense that only gives up 130 yards per game through the air and only allowed 7 touchdowns this season. Uh, so it's an uphill battle for Valley. Defensively, Delta Devils allowed 229 yards per game, and they've given up 22 touchdowns. So all signs, no matter how you look at it, all signs point to Prairie View winning this game. Um, Coach Jackson's gonna have those guys locked in. You don't even have to worry really about them overlooking anybody. I think they realize that that this is still another step toward where they're trying to go, and you don't want to let up off the gas at this point. So I think Prairie View's gonna give their best effort here. Valley, it just was it was a season that had some promise. They were in a couple games early, but they just haven't been able to have a lot go right for them. And I don't think this is going to be the week that it happens. So I like Prairie View in this game. I think they win it. I'm going to say 38-7. I don't think they're going to go, total, gas to the floor, but I don't think they're going to let up on Valley either. So I like the Panthers to pull this one out and wrap up their regular season with a win. Next up, we're gonna go to Montgomery, and we have the Hornets. Alabama State taking on the Golden Lions of Pine Bluff. Bama State, obviously, this is a must-win for them. They need this win, and they need Jackson State to lose to win the East. And not only that, but you still want to close out your conference season with a win. So you won the most games that you won in quite some time. You don't want that to stop now. Uh, I think they're still trying to get Andrew Body right. Tayshawn Smoot has been solid. The offense has been playing well. Like I said, if you look at it, they got a ton of weapons. We say it every week. You got Jones and Harrell at wide receiver. You got Holesclaw, um, Harris, Ligon, all these guys at running back. This team is just loaded with weapons, and they've played tremendous offensively. And I said it week after week. They haven't scored less than 30 points all year. So I really don't see that changing here. Pine Bluff, they've had some hope spots. They have a guy like Jalen Jennings who has run the ball well this season. Kind of came out of nowhere. Um, has 803 yards on the season, and so he's run the ball well. Christian Peters has been up and down as a quarterback. I know DJ Stevenson got some time last week, but uh, Christian Peters has been kind of up and down. Um, has shown potential to make some plays, but he also has kind of shot himself in the foot with some turnovers. David Robinson, Kareem Burke, and wide receiver have been solid. Um, Trey Gliff has been solid at wide receiver, and the defense, even though they aren't great, they have done a good job of forcing interceptions. Um, they actually have 11 interceptions on the season, which is second in the league. So they force turnovers, but they've also turned the ball over a lot. They also have thrown 11 interceptions. So it's give and take, but the onus of this game is on the Pine Bluff defense. They have to be able to find a way to slow Bama State down. The offense for Bama State is very explosive. It's not as efficient as it was with Andrew Body, and that's to be expected with a different guy running the show. But the weapons are still there. The explosiveness is still there. Sometimes that down to down efficiency you kind of lose, but this, like I said, this is a team that is one of the top offenses in almost every category. I mean, they average The passing numbers have kind of dropped a little bit. They're at 225 yards per game, which is still good. They have thrown a couple more interceptions, but again, that's to be expected. They're second in the league in rushing with 222 yards per game, and they are second in the league in total offense at 447 yards per game. Meanwhile, they're scoring 40 points per game. So they haven't really lost a lot. Like I say, if I had to say they lost anything, I would say they lost efficiency, um, but not not explosiveness or scoring. They've still been scoring points, and I think that's going to be the case here. Pine Bluff defense gives up 32 points per game, so that's right where Bama State wants to be. Offensively, Pine Bluff has been up and down. They're averaging 25 points per game. The Hornets defense, they allow 22 point, 22.3 points per game. Pine Bluff offense, right now they're averaging 326 yards per game. Um, Bama State defense will allow 364 yards per game. Pine Bluff rushing attack is at 151 yards per game. Bama State gives up 177. This Bama State defense hasn't necessarily been, where they were in previous years, but they make plays when they need to. They kind of bend but don't break, and with an offense like they have, then that's more than adequate. Um, Golden Lions 210 yards through the air. Like I said, they had those 11 interceptions to go with the 16 touchdowns. Bama State is actually second in passing defense at 187 yards per game. They lead the league in interceptions with 12. So both defenses in this game can force turnovers. So you really have to be careful throwing the ball. I think the difference between these two teams is Bama State will make you pay with those turnovers. Pine Bluff, you never know what they might give it back to you. But Bama State is obviously, I would say, obviously the better team. Neither team has a great pass rush, but Bama State does a really good job protecting the quarterback. Um, so all in all, like I said, this is a must win for Bama State. I think they win it. I think they score over 30 again. Pine Bluff, I think they kind of got demoralized last week. Um, and I don't know how they're gonna, rebound from that. They haven't really played well on the road. They kind of out of sorts when they go on the road. They have long trips and they kind of out of sorts, and this is another long trip. So you kind of expect them to not be at their best. So I like Bama State in this game. I'm gonna say 45-10. I think I think the Golden Lions are gonna be able to make a few plays, but Bama State's offense, defense, and special teams are gonna be the factors here and get the win for the Hornets. Next up, we head to Houston, and we have Texas Southern taking on Alabama A&M Bulldogs. Tigers looking for their first 6-win season in quite some time. They got a chance to improve their record by one game all around. It's been an up and down season. They haven't really played great football. They haven't really played bad football. Um, they've been in a lot of close games. They've had a couple games get away from them, but they've been in games. They just never. They don't really. If you look at it, they don't really wow you with anything, but they play hard and they're physical and that keeps them in games. You're not going to push them around. Last week was a good example of that. Southern gave them a hell of a punch, but they took it and they made the plays to get the win. Same thing with Bama State. They were neck and neck with them before the mistakes on their end cost them that game. So they've been in games. They lost to Prairie View about a point. They've won a couple close games. They've been kind of making their way around, and now they kind of have a chance for a strong finish. Alabama A&M had a better game last week than they did the previous week. This team is really banged up. The end of the season can't come soon enough for these guys. They had some promise, especially offensively early in the season, and now things have kind of gotten away from them. When you look at the Bulldogs, they average 24.9 points per game. Tigers, they average 26 points per game defensively. Tigers allow 25 points per game. Bulldogs allow 34.3. When you look at total offense, Alabama A&M is at um, they are 351 yards per game. Texas Southern 346. Total defense, Texas Southern is at 360 per game. I think their defense is really underrated. Um, they don't really have a lot of name guys, but they just play hard, and they make a lot of big plays when needed. Alabama A&M 427 yards per game allowed on defense, and that was always the question with this unit. From the start of the season, could the defense kind of step in and help things. And for a while it looked like that, but at once they kind of got going in conference play, things kind of went south. The running game, 125 yards per game. They did run the ball for over 200 yards last week, so that's a positive. TSU defensively, they give up 167. Alabama A&M gives up 191 yards per game on the ground. Texas Southern averages 181. Uh, Athan Renfro, his health is vital in this game. I know he left the game last week with an ankle injury, so not quite sure if he's 100% um, or close to that because he's a guy that can really impact this game with his running style. But they do have, they did come off the bench with a couple guys that were able to make some key runs for them last week. So the potential for the run game is still there, and you can't count out KJ Cooper as a runner. The passing game for TSU is not it's not flashy, 164 yards per game, but they've been able to make the plays when they need to. Richardson and Leary and those guys at wide receiver teaming up with Cooper, who was really really good last week passing the ball. That could be a big factor here. Bama A&M, they're third in passing at 226 yards per game, but they have thrown 11 interceptions. Turnovers continue to plague this team. Um, they've had injuries at the quarterback spot. They've had injuries at the running back spot. Uh, Tight end, Travante Abner, he's been in and out. So you're not really playing with the unit that you started with, and when you have those problems, of course you're going to look different. Bulldogs allow 236 through the air. TSU allows 193 through the air. So Tigers also have 9 interceptions as a defense, so they've been pretty solid with forcing turnovers. I like Texas Southern in this game. I don't think it's going to be a pretty type game. Offensively, may not be a ton of points in this game, but I think TSU is they're playing with an edge and a toughness um, that you don't really see a lot from that team in years past. And they're always going to typically be in games. Um, they will have the occasional game where the other team just kind of gets ahead of them and they can't get back in it, but they typically stay in games. A&M, um, they've been bitten by the injury bug all season, and I think that's been their downfall all year once they got in the conference play. So I don't really see too much of a difference here. I think this game will be close. I like Texas Southern in this game. I'm gonna say they win by 3. I'm a 27-24. I think the Bulldogs, they did find something with the running attack with Ryan Morrow last week. If they can get that going and Eric Hanley can be solid in the passing game, that will keep them around. But if they can't keep guys on the field, then I think TSU is in a good spot to win this game. So I like the Tigers by 3. Next up, we have the Florida Classic, FAMU against Bethune. In recent years, FAMU's been the heavy favorite in this game. This season, a couple weeks ago, I would say Bethune would be the heavy favorite, but now Bethune coming off of two straight losses. Um, it's more of a toss up than some people might want to think. Um, Wildcats offensively kind of tailed off these last couple weeks. Grambling held them in check for the most part. Jackson State did not allow an offensive score from Texas from Bethune Cookman last week. The only points came on 2 field goals and a kickoff return for a touchdown. It didn't really move the ball much. The running game wasn't that great. The passing game really wasn't there. Um, So can they get that back together this week? Of course, both teams gonna be ready to play. It's a rivalry game, so both teams want to go out on a strong note. FAMU's been up and down. Um, they haven't really looked great in any phase of the game, but they've beaten the teams that you're supposed to beat. Um, Bethune kind of the same. They haven't really knocked off anybody that is ahead of them. They've beaten everybody that's kind of on par or below them. So this should make for an interesting ball game. Wildcats averaging 28.9 points per game. Uh, Rattlers averaging 22.6. His offense just has not been able to put points on the board. Um, Even though they've moved the ball well through the air, I'm speaking of FAMU, even though they've moved the ball well through the air, they just haven't been able to put points on the board. Defensively, the Rattlers are allowing 33.3 points per game. That's definitely not what we're used to from FAMU on the defensive side of the ball. Bethune-Cookman is at 32 and a half. So even though the offense for the Wildcats has been really solid these last few weeks, the defense hasn't really been that great. And they've been able to overcome that with their offense. Wildcats average 404 yards per game. Rattlers 359. Bethune-Cookman gives up 438 in total defense. FAMU 407. Rushing attacks. FAMU is at 124 yards per game. They just don't run the ball much. They have the fewest rushing attempts on the season. They just don't really run the ball, even though they have, Jamal Haley, Thad Franklin. Those guys can run the ball, but they just don't really do it. Um, Bethune-Cookman, 167 yards per game. That running game hasn't been as efficient as it was in the earlier weeks. Cam Ransom's kind of been up and down these last couple of weeks. He had a really off game against Grambling and didn't really have a lot going his way against Jackson State. So can he get it back right and take advantage of the weapons? Can they get their running game going again? That's going to be a key in this game because FAMU, they struggle against the run, giving up 192 yards per game. Bethune-Cookman does allow 184 yards per game on the ground. So if FAMU can get their running game going, they could have some success there. When you look at the passing attacks, FAMU 234 yards per game. Bethune-Cookman is at 236, which leads the league. So these are the top two statistical passing offenses in the conference. R.J. Johnson has been a much maligned quarterback. I mean, when you look at his numbers are really good. But he's had his good moments and his bad moments, and sometimes his bad moments are too much to overcome. Right now he's 173 of 263, 14 touchdowns. Only has one interception for 2,086 yards. So he's had solid games, completing 65% of his passes. Those numbers are all great. And honestly, if Andrew Biden hadn't played this year, his numbers would be tops in the league. But he's had those lapses, um, and a lot of people are kind of not not pleased with his play at times. But he's been able to make some things happen. Threw for almost 300 last week. Of course, the way the season has gone, these games have been pretty close. So a lot of that stuff doesn't get looked fondly on. Cam Ransom, he like I said, he's had his good weeks, he's had his bad weeks. I thought he would take a bigger step forward this season, and it looked like he was in the middle portion of the season, kind of tailing off now. Can he close out the season strong? That's going to be the key because Malik Huggins, Javon Ross are weapons for him in the passing game. If he can get the ball to those guys, they, against this FAMU defense, they are capable of making some things happen. Malik Huggins is third in the league, averaging 73 and a half yards per game. He has 56 receptions, which is second in the league. Javon Ross has 50 catches for 603 yards. He averages 54.8 yards per game. So both of those guys are big time weapons. They do things differently, but they both are great weapons. Kennard Wilcher for FAMU, he's been solid. 31 catches, 495 yards. and 3 touchdowns. Uh, so they've been able to get some things going. A guy like Golden Lawrence can take the ball to the house, and you get the ball in his hands. He has 2 touchdowns on the season right now on 24 catches. This should be I mean, obviously last season was, I think, a 41-38 game. So I think this is going to be another one of those games where there's going to be a lot of points scored. Um, I've been, you know, I've been wanting to lean Bethune in this game because I just like the way that they kind of righted the ship after the early portions of the schedule and kind of made themselves into a team that could, finish in the top half of the division. But they've kind of tailed off a little bit, and I don't know if they're going to be able to get that back. FAMU's on a roller coaster, so they kind of used to having those up weeks and down weeks, and I think they may be able to outlast the Wildcats. I'm gonna predict another game that reaches the 30s. I'm gonna say 35-34. I think FAMU pulled this out 1 point game. I could see Bethune winning this game, but I think they've been kind of on a downtrend these last couple weeks, and I don't know if they can get it back right um, in time to win this game. So that's why I'm going with FAMU in this one. And finally, we have the Soul Bowl. Alcorn heading to Jackson to take on the Tigers of Jackson State. Alcorn got a chance to finish the season with a strong mark. They're on a nice winning streak. They got a chance to play spoiler. They got a chance to really ruin a season if they win this game and Bama State wins. So there's a lot here for Alcorn. There's a lot of motivation for them, but for Jackson State, it's a lot of motivation too because they need to win this game to win the East. So you're gonna get Jackson State at their best. I don't think they. I mean, I really don't think, regardless, they were gonna come in and overlook Alcorn because it's a rivalry game. I think Jacobian Morgan may be back this week. That could be a shot in the arm. Although Lockhart's played, he played well at times, but Alcorn is gonna have to be able to stop this Jackson State rushing attack. I think that's the key. Both teams run the ball well, and so that that is the key in this game. Jackson State averages 277 yards per game on the ground. Alcorn 181. Jackson State is tops in run defense though at 106, and Alcorn second at 127. So both defenses are solid against the run. Um, but Jackson State has so many guys they can throw at you to run the ball, and they all are capable of being feature backs for any team in the league. They had 3 guys go for over 100 yards last week, so can Alcorn slow that down? And when I say slow that down, I mean hold them to like 250. If they can hold them to 250 and kind of keep the passing game in check, they may have a chance. But that's a big ask um, for your defense. Alcorn's defense has been quietly solid this year. 349 yards per game in total defense. That's fourth in the league. Jackson State second in total defense at 310 per game. Passing defense, Alcorn, they had their struggles there, giving up 221 yards per game. Jackson State, 204. Alcorn, when they do go to the air, they haven't been, even though Jalen Tober has been a solid quarterback this year, numbers wise, they haven't been that great. 172 yards per game, 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Jackson State, 213 through the air, 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Again, JSU has the weapons in the passing game, but this is a run first team. This is a team that wants to run the football, and they do it. They do it well. They run the ball more than anybody in the league. So they will run the ball. They run the ball 460 times. That's 54 times more than the second place team in terms of carries. So they are gonna run the football. They're gonna move the ball. They're gonna score points, which they're averaging 34 points per game. Alcorn is at 24 and a half. Alcorn gives up 22.8 points per game, and Jackson State 18.1. So Alcorn defensively, like I said, they've been a really, really solid defense this year. Haven't really had a lot of talk about them defensively because they don't really have a lot of name guys. I mean, Stamarion is always a really good guy for them, but they haven't really had that guy that just explode like a Malachi Bailey or anybody like that. You know what I'm saying? So they do have those guys that can make those plays, but defensively they're more of a team defense, and so they've been able to slow teams down at times. Offensively, Jacorian Sewell had a touchdown last week. Reggie Davis had run the ball well in these last 3 or 4 weeks. So they have the potential to make this a contest. Um, I just don't know if they have the consistency to keep it keep it that way all game long because when you if you look at last week's game against Bethune Cookman, Jackson State moved the ball up and down the field. They didn't really close out a lot of drives, whether that was because of penalties or just not really finishing drives. But they were able to move the ball up and down the field, especially with the ground game. That alone gives you the opportunity to win, and that doesn't even take into account your defense on the other side. You control the ball and the clock, you give yourself a better chance to win regardless. And if the other team is struggling to move the ball down the field because your defense isn't allowing it, then you have more chances to get yourself together. A good defense is going to erase a lot of mistakes your offense makes, and that's one of the keys for Jackson State. If they don't play a super clean game offensively, the defense is going to make enough plays to erase a lot of that. They did have a better game with penalties last week, even though they did get hurt by some penalties, but they did have a better game numerically with penalties, and that's going to be key here. You have to take care of the football. You have to not shoot yourself in the foot with penalties. You got to make sure if you're Jackson State, you got to make sure you keep Alcorn having to drive the length of the field. The more they have to drive, the more opportunities that you have to get stops and turnovers. Alcorn, they're gonna need to have some things go their way. They're gonna need some breaks, um, because just lining up and going at Jackson State right now is not the way to beat them. You're gonna have to kind of smoke and mirror it. You're gonna need the turnovers. You're gonna need short fields. You're gonna need good returns. You're gonna need defense to make some plays. You're gonna need your whole team to win in this game. And Alcorn hasn't really had a lot of those type of games, but they've won games, and you can't take that away. Um, like I said, I think Jackson State wins this game. I mean, I think it's gonna be a battle because it's a rivalry. Last year Jackson State really, they really beat down Alcorn. Alcorn did, have a early long touchdown that kind of made it seem like it might be more of a game, but that team really that team was a little bit more limited offensively than they are this year. Um, so I think they do have the potential to make this a game, and I think it's gonna be a pretty decent game. I don't know if Alcorn definitely got enough to win, but I think it's gonna be a game kind of similar to last week where Jackson State wins. I think they win comfortably, but it may not look that way. So I'm gonna stick with a score similar to last week. I'm going to go 28-14. I think they will win this game rather comfortably, but it may not look that way. And that could make things seem a little bit more interesting than they may be. But I do think they win and wrap up the East with the victory on Saturday. So taking a look at the standings, heading into this final full week of conference play, Jackson State 6-1 in the East, 8-2 overall. They won 3 in a row. Bama State 6-1 in the East, 8-2 overall. They won 4 in a row. FAMU 4-2, 5-5 overall. They won 2 in a row. Bethune 4-3, 5-6 overall. They've lost 2 in a row. Alabama and them 1-6, 4-7 overall. They lost 4 in a row. Valley 0-6, 1-9 overall. They've lost 4 in a row. Prairie View 6-1, 8-3 overall. They won 2 in a row. Grambling 4-3, 7-4 overall. They've lost 1. Take Southern 4-3, 5-5 overall. They've won 1. Alcorn 4-3 overall, 4-3 in conference, 5-6 overall. They won 4 in a row. Pine Bluff 2-5, 4-7 overall. They've lost 2 in a row. Southern 0-7 and 1-10 overall. They've lost 9 in a row. And that is the standings. Let's take a look at the schedule for next week. Obviously, not a lot of games left. There's only 3 games left in week 14. You have the Turkey Day Classic on Thanksgiving, November 27th, Tuskegee at Alabama State, 2 p.m. kickoff Central Time. Saturday, November 29th, you got Grambling and Southern in the Bayou Classic, 1 p.m. Central Time kick, and FAMU at Valley. That's a 2 o'clock kick, also on Saturday, November 29th. So those are the only 3 games we have remaining in the regular season after this week. And then the SWAC championship game is at 1 p.m. Central on December 6th. So we only have 4 SWAC games left at this point, 5 if you count a Celebration Bowl after this week. So yeah, obviously, the season is dwindling. We will know who wins the East after Saturday. Bama State plays at 12, so we'll know where they stand basically by the midpoint of the afternoon game. Jackson State plays at 2:30, so Bama State gonna win. Well, they should win. I picked them to win, so they'll be able to kind of scoreboard watch and not have to worry about playing their game. And we'll see what happens. So with that being said, man, I'm your tour guide around the SWAC. See well signing out, and I will catch y'all on the rebound. Peace.